Welcome back, guys, to Loveshack, and today we're doing another deck profile video for you, bringing you guys a Tenyi Invoked deck profile, or Invoked Tenyi, however you want to go ahead and say that is totally fine with me. I will say it's a little bit of an idea that was actually presented to me by a friend that I go to locals with, and I thought it was neat, and I said this would be a pretty cool deck profile to try out. So it's sort of a work in progress, but I do think that there's a lot of actually, like, good synergy between the two archetypes. Obviously, Invoked designed to work with all sorts of different things, and the fact that there's a bunch of different attributes of this does sort of only help that. So I'll go ahead and get into it and try and break down some of the choices. And of course, this will probably be a first run. I think there may be some future updates to this coming, down the line, because I think the more we get a chance to kind of fuck around with it, the more we might see it used. So first off, 3 Tenyi Spirit Adhara. Now, most of the Tenyi stuff, actually all the Tenyi stuff, I'm sorry, was released in Rising Rampage. It's all relatively cheap. I think even the Link Shaman, which is an Ultra, is only like $5-6. So if it's something you're interested in picking up, I'd say probably get it sooner rather than later, just because for the most part it's really affordable right now for a deck that down the line has the ability to actually become something. So Adhara and all of the general Tenyis, if you control no effect monsters, you can special summon it from your hand. If you control a face-up non-effect monster, you can banish it from your hand or graveyard and target a banished worm monster and add it to your hand. These are both once per turn effects, so it's a pretty good play starter. They all have that ability to special if you control no effect monsters, so they have link combos with their own stuff. But they're also balanced in a way that you really can't just spam the board with them in order to, just some generic mindless link spam. So it's a really neat strategy, and they have some synchros and stuff that come out in the next set that I think will make them a lot better. Tenyi Spirit Vishuddha, or however the hell you pronounce that. I may have mispronounced it. You can sue me if you want. This one's really good, and a card that I think is actually going to see some play outside of the deck as well. And just being a generic level 7, you can special summon for free. That same first effect, and then its other effect, when you banish it from your hand or graveyard, you can target a card your opponent controls and return it to the hand. So obviously there's some synergy with Orchist and other decks, just because it's a free summon that synergizes really well with the rest of the stuff, and it's dark, so it works with their links. But within the context of the deck, it's still really good because the ability to spin something to the hand from the grave is always useful, and so yeah, that's pretty self-explanatory on that one. 3 of there. I think I'm playing 3 of almost all of them, actually, with the exception of 1. Tenyi Spirit Shthana, if that's how you pronounce it. This one, same first effect. A little bit of a different. If a face-up non-effect monster you control is destroyed by battle or by a card effect, you can banish this card from your hand or graveyard, target one of those destroyed monsters, special summon it, then you can pop a monster your opponent controls. So essentially, if your link gets destroyed and you special this from your banish this card rather, special it back, then pop a monster on the field. So it sort of plays that protect the castle type with your main links. Get one of your big links on the board, keep it out, and then some of your other accessory cards like this one and the fire one, which we'll get to in a second, support to recur it and also get you some actual field advantage if it does get destroyed. Not to mention 2000 defense, so it's useful, and of course they all have that first effect for the special summon, so I didn't get too much into that one. This one, 2 of the Tenyi Spirit Mapura, or Mapura, I don't fucking know. This one's same first effect, and then when your opponent activates a card effect that targets a face-up non-effect monster you control, you can banish this card from your hand or graveyard, negate the activation, and if you do, destroy that card. So it's really good, just in general, being a hand trap that protects your link monsters. I don't know, obviously targeting isn't hugely prevalent like it was before with certain cards, but it's definitely still something that comes up from time to time, so it's useful, and it just in general acting as a protector is really solid. Any extra hand traps or decks that gives you the ability to play around stuff is good. The last Tenyi is 2 of the Tenyi Spirit Nahata. This one is when a battle happens between your non-effect monster and an opponent's monster, you banish this card from your hand or graveyard. That opponent's monster loses 1500 attack till the end phase. So it's essentially an Honest for the deck. It works a little different than Honest, but in general, just the fact that you can kind of, I think it sort of speaks for itself with the links, especially the one that's 3000. It makes it so that there's not a lot that can get over it, and you have other ways of protecting them as well. And then the last hand trap there is the 2 Ash Blossom. It's really good in general, and because you're not, you're more or less setting up a board and then just trying to maintain it. So the ability to slow down your opponent's plays, counter your opponent's plays, that's just Ash Blossom is just obviously really good at that. And So 2, not 3, because I don't think you need 3 there, but that's just sort of a personal preference. 1 Destrudo. This really does obviously synergize with a lot of the deck, the synchro potential that you have with it, but also the ability to just sort of accelerate link plays. Destrudo is just a generally good card, and it's, you know, got the ability to combo well with stuff. And then 1 Mare. So I like this a lot. You know, there's obvious synergy with Alistair because you can use it to make the water invoked. But Mare in general, you know, it's a worm, so it gets support from the other Tenyi cards that do support worms directly in a few of the spells. And it's just a good card that helps with link acceleration and, of course, you know, Yahtzee and stuff as well. Alright, and then I have 1 Phantom Skyblaster. I wish you could play multiples because it is a really good card, and it just, in general, like, you don't normal summon much in the deck at all. So once you've set up your board, you can normal Phantom Skyblaster, get your tokens, and make some additional link plays. And then triple Alistair the Invoker. So just an awesome card in general. I think the Invoked Engine's really cool, and it was one of those things that, you know, when I heard about the idea, I'm like, this on paper sort of speaks for itself. So the fact that this actually also functions as an honest, you know, of sorts rather, for, you know, your few link monsters means you can combo this with the win one, and your links can pretty much run over almost anything. Of course, Alistair does not have to be used when you're battling a monster, so you can actually just, you know, buff up your Shaman or buff up the, what is it, Berserker, to do extra damage. So that's 3, and, you know, Alistair does some searches. So that's the monster lineup. I think, in general, like the Tenyi stuff, I still have to familiarize myself with a little bit more, just because it is still relatively new and I didn't play with it a ton online, so I'm sort of going at it from scratch here. For the spells, we got Triple Vessel for the Dragon Cycle. I think this card's really good. Send 1 worm monster from your deck to the graveyard. Then, if you control a face-up non-effect monster, you can add 1 worm Tenyi monster from your deck to your hand with a different name than the monsters. This can send, like, Mare. This can send some of the other worms. You know, any of the Tenyis that you want engrave. It's basically a painful decision, but it's not restricted to only being able to send normals. So you can get your Protector in the grave, you can get your Honest engrave, and obviously any type of consistency booster for the deck is good. A triple Flawless Protection of the Tenyi. This is their field spell. All non-effect monsters on the field are unaffected by monster effects. Once per turn, if your opponent special summons an effect monster while you control a face-down monster or a non-effect monster, you can draw 2 cards. This is actually really good, because if you do sort of get your link out and you set up a board where you can just kind of protect it, you know, it's not going to be affected by stuff, so it sort of gives it that immunity. But on top of that, you also can still control effect monsters in order to draw. It's just you have to control a face-down monster or another one. So basically, you can put out Makaba as well as some of your links. You still get the draw off this, so it's a really good card in general, and the protection for your non-effect monsters just is sort of the icing on the cake. You could argue whether or not you need 3, but I just think it's one of those things you want to see as early as possible, and so that's, you know, kind of the logic behind it there. Up next, 2 Magical Meltdown, 1 Terraforming. Obviously, Terraforming's only at 1, so you can only play the 1 when this card's activated. You know, add Alistair to your hand. Just thins the deck. Also, you know, your invoked fusion summons can't be negated, so it sort of adds some extra. I think really just the search off Meltdown in general is really good, and getting access to your Alistair and being able to get access to your invocations early and often is really effective for the deck. 2 Invocation, it's recyclable, so you don't really need to play 3. I can go into the deck, but I know that Magelica, which is the Earth invoked, is probably the best one, the one I go into most commonly, just because it is a non-effect monster, so it does synergize with the Tenyi cards, but Makaba and Casitas and the other ones are pretty solid too. So I think, you know, if you've played Invoked in anything, you know Invocation is sort of, you know what it's there for. It's not really fooling anybody. Triple Allure of Darkness. I don't remember exactly how many darks it is I'm playing in there. It's, you know, the 3 Alistair, Phantom Skyblaster, Destrudo, and then of course the 3. So there's 8 total, and a lot of them are searchable. And obviously there are certain times where you're really not going to need them, especially, you know, later in the game once you've already kind of got your board set up. The dark monsters recyclable, and you can get it engraved quick. So it just kind of thins the deck. I feel like talking about Allure is just kind of silly, but I just wanted to sort of explain the choice behind it. We were playing Cap Shell at one point, just because of the lack of normal summoning in general. I think essentially in the build that I put together, elected not to go with Cap Shell. For those of you unfamiliar with this card, it is the it's a secret rare that came out in Rising Rampage. Basically, if it's tributed, you can draw a card. If it's used as material for any extra deck, you can draw a card. Or if it's detached from an Xyz monster, you can draw a card. So basically, the idea was you summon it, you make a link, you get a little draw power. We ended up not going forward with that for the ultimate version of the deck right now, but I guess it's something you could revisit. It is a neat card. I do think the fact that it, you know, just generic draw power, but ultimately, if you are going to use a normal summon, you know, Phantom Sky Blaster is probably the better way to go, and Cap Shell can dead draw, but it is something, you know, worth considering if it's intriguing to you at all. One Foolish, obviously all your effects can activate Engrave for the most part, so this is basically what do you need and how soon do you need it, but it synergizes with Destrudo as well. And then for the last two spells, double Twin Twisters, just basically, again, what I said about the graveyard stuff. There's not, like, anything in this deck that doesn't mind being in the graveyard, so pretty much pop stuff, allow you to go off and kind of make your plays as good as possible. And then for the traps, just 2 Waterfall of Dragon Souls. Really good. It's a Rhoda for worms, but it's also draw power if you discard a worm and then you draw cards. So it's got like a sort of a Swiss Army knife kind of thing of effects there, and it's just an overall really good card. So I wish it was a spell. I guess it'd be kind of broken if it was. Just an honorable mention. I know some people are going to ask about this one here. Fists of the Unrivaled Tenyi. This is not in the deck right now. When a spell trap or monster effect is activated while you control a non-effect monster, negate the activation, and it doesn't destroy, but it does negate the activation. Also, if this card is set and destroyed by your opponent's card effect, you can special summon a non-effect monster from your extra deck. So, in theory, it's pretty good. I think he basically told me that in his initial build, when he was playing around with it, he didn't ever really have much of a need for it, and the fact that you do have the targeting negation and Ash Blossom and other ways to counter stuff already, it just, I think, ultimately didn't end up making the final cut. I think it's worth revisiting. I do think the card is solid, and depending on what other support they get and whether or not there's more ways to access that, just without having to hope you draw it, we could see that having a place in the deck for sure. So it's one of those things I would say definitely hold on to if you have them and you're interested in playing the deck, because in a pure build, not playing the Invoked, I think you would definitely play it. So, alright, and for the extra deck, I can get myself about me here. Triple Monk of the Tenyi. Just a Link 1 non-Link Tenyi monster. You just want to get this out as early and often as possible. It immediately sets you up to be eligible for plays, non-effect monster. It's a downward pointing arrow, so you can sort of further your Link plays, and in general, I think Link 1s are just... This card obviously is what it is. Link 1s in general are kind of a dangerous concept just because they do sort of enable silly plays for very minimal reward, but that one's not too bad, so it just kind of is what it is. Basically, the ultimate reason with him is to sort of accelerate further into Berserker. Double Shaman of the Tenyi. This is a really good card in general. So this is 2 worm monsters. Once per turn, you can discard a card, target a worm monster in your graveyard, special summon it. Also, for the rest of this turn, you cannot activate the effects of monsters special summon from the extra deck except Tenyi monsters. And then, when an attack is declared involving your non-effect monster, you can destroy 1 card your opponent controls. So this, the best combo piece for this card is Mare. And honestly, being able to get Mare Engrave, revive this, and just sort of generate pluses without really having to do much of anything, it's really solid. But this has basically says whatever you want in your graveyard, whatever you want to do, bring it out, and it opens up the door for more worm cards to be sort of worked into this deck a little bit too, to worm their way in, if you will, because it just is an awesome card overall. It points, you know, upside down. It's not a, you know, it's an effect monster, so it doesn't necessarily have the same protection that some of the other ones do, but that's okay, because you're going to use it mostly to ladder up into Berserker. So, Berserker the Tenyi, just 3,000 attack, 2+ monsters, including a Link monster. It is ridiculously easy to make, and once you have this guy on board with the Wind, that is the Honest, as well as the Protection, it's basically, like I said, protect the castle. Like, you just get him out, and it does suck, because he does point up, it does open the ability for your opponent to, you know, utilize Link Zones, but it's just a really solid card overall, for what it does for the deck, and it's a big beat stick that synergizes well with the other stuff. As far as the other links, I'll be totally honest and say that, like, I don't love this layout, if I'm being honest, but right now this is what we're working with. So 1 Underclock Taker, 1 Land Ferunxus. It's just a non-effect monster, so it offers you, if for some reason you run out of monks or whatever, you need it for the ability to drop Link 2s, that's what it's there for. Cerberus, Phoenix, standard stuff. put Unicorn in there too. Borload, just really good card in general. I mean, there are some times where you're going to end up wanting to make that, where your board isn't going to be enough to protect you, so that's what that is. Yahtzee, Evil of the Yang Zing. Now again, that has synergy with the whole deck, being that they're all worms. There is also, Adhara is a tuner, so you can make Yahtzee with that, you can make Yahtzee with Merrimeri, you can make it with Destrudo. There's ways to make that work. So, really good card, pop something, and then pull out something from the deck. And then, alright, so this is where it gets a little, interesting, because right now, these are the 3 invoked. 1 Magelica, 1 Casitas, 1 Makaba. I think, if I counted this right, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, yeah. Alright, we're at exactly 15. For some reason I thought, because we had talked about this before I did the video, and I said, I don't know if I want to change this. So, you ultimately want to play 2 of this. I don't know what we'll cut. It'll probably be something like Underclock, or maybe even, I mean, Makaba's good, but like, you don't necessarily need it per se. Magelica is basically, like, if you can make this, it puts you in a really good position. The fact that you can just have this 3000 beat stick on board that is able to be protected with all the Tenyi cards is sort of what gave him the idea, I think, when he initially put this together, to combine the Invoked engine with this stuff, and you really want to play multiples, because more often than not, this is what you're going to want to make. But obviously, Casitas is good. You do play the waters. It's pretty much nearly impossible to get over without like a Kaiju or something when its effect is just at least for a turn. So, and it can attack in defense position, which is just a neat gimmick card. Makaba does what it does. Some of your cards lock you out of extra deck effects, like the Shaman does, so I understand, like, you know, there can be a conflict there. Like, is it actually that useful? How many lights do you play that you can utilize it with? Obviously, some people might say Purgatrio as well. Purgatrio, you play Ash Blossoms, you play the Fire Tenyi. Purgatrio's good too. It's just a space thing, and the fact that this is sort of like a first go-round at this. So I would say definitely expect an updated variant of this deck profile sooner rather than later. But I wanted to put this out there and sort of gauge interest and thoughts and see what you guys think. So let me know what you think in the comments below. If you want to see more deck profile videos like this, some more ideas that are a little bit out there, or just more, you know, maybe like a general Tenyi build, definitely let me know and we'll see what we can put together for you. In the meantime, though, I do appreciate you guys watching and supporting as always, and please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you next time at Loveshack.